Cheers.
Cheers.
Right? Not terrible.
No, not terrible. South Korean?
Taiwanese.
Taiwanese Scotch.
Even though that's not a thing, but
Technically, no. Yeah.
right.
But yeah, good. Yeah. Not bad. Okay. Everything might look a little different. First night shoot, doing that on purpose to play with the lighting. See, it would just open up a lot more
time
possibilities for us to do this. Yeah?
Right.
As opposed to having to do them during the day with outside lighting.
Yep.
So, today's topic, letting go.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave it simply at that.
Yeah. So this is a good one. You mentioned it to me a few days ago. And innately let's do it, right? It's interesting because letting go, or in my mind, how I view this is dealing with loss. Correct me if you see it a different way, but dealing with loss. It's something that everyone has to do and nobody wants to, right? Like nobody is ever like, that thing that I'm attached to, that person, that job, that whatever it is, I want to lose that. It's like, no, absolutely nobody does. And the way that I look at this is there's a few different categories of, loss in and of itself. There is what we can control and what we can't control, kind of rolling off of last week, but relating it to loss, the things we can't control can be devastating, right? They can wreck us.
Did you say can or can't?
Can.
Okay.
No, sorry. The things we can't control. The things that are out of our ability to do anything with. Prime example, death. We have no control over death. It is a finality that we all deal with, right? Loved ones pass away all the time. You hope they have a full life. In the meantime, you hope that at the end of their life, they're fulfilled. They're not in a negative state, right? But we have no control over it. It will inevitably happen to all of us. Then there are the things that we have some control over, right? You never have control over everything. That's never a possibility.
Maybe your mind.
Sure. But even that, our subconscious can run, right?
But
you don't...
Sorry, I'm
No, go ahead.
Devil's advocate and say about how well do you have your subconscious trained?
I think there's a part of that for sure.
Okay, I'm getting way off topic here.
No, you're good. You're good.
For it, so.
Yep.
I don't want to face what you're getting into.
Yeah. That's okay. No, that's good.
See?
That's good.
It's like a natural roadblock. Sam and I talked about this a little bit before because I did not want to do this episode. Like, I did not want to do this.
No.
But I realized something deep inside of me doesn't want to face this topic.
Yep.
And look at that. And you start pushing in, and I start talking about something that's completely irrelevant, that I know is irrelevant.
Yes.
Just
because it's touching something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, dude, more props to you for just doing it anyways, though. Because how many of us don't do the things that are good for us, but we don't want to, right? And to that point, I think it's good because, like, you don't know why you don't want to do this. You just know that there's some uncomfort there. To get back to the control and no control. No control, death. There's plenty of other things we don't have control over. Controlled items. Let's talk about losing a job or losing a relationship. We'll go with losing a relationship. Almost everybody can relate to that one.
Much stronger feelings, too.
Way more.
Much greater attachment.
Yeah, for the most part.
Generally,
Yep, totally agreed. So, with that, you don't have control over the other person. You don't have control over everything, right? Again, we can't control everything, but we have some inputs that are ours to control. I guess the way we deal with that on the onset and the opposite end of, that's going to change a lot of things. So when you face the dragon of whatever it is that's the negative loss that you're dealing with, you have two things you can do with it, right? For most things in life, we have two directions we can go. We can take a positive path, we can take a negative path. And as a small, no, not small, but a tangent of this, there is one aspect of loss that we all have to do. There's no negotiating, there's no getting around it. If it's an impactful loss in your life, you will have to go through the stages of grief. Are you familiar with these? Have you heard these before?
I've heard them, but I couldn't name them off the top of my head.
Right. And every time I think about it, I can think of like 2 or 3 of them, but there's 5. I have them written down. I can never remember them. It's denial, isolation, anger, bargaining, and acceptance. So they're written in that order. You can go in that order, but the crazy thing about it is you can do denial. This isn't happening. It's just a fluke for the relationship. We'll take a relationship and just use that as the ongoing example here. This isn't happening. We can fix this. It's going to change. Something's going to happen. Whatever. Any kind of like, no, it's not happening. Just pure denial, right? You're going to have that. That may not be your first stage, but you will go through it. There is no beating around it. Isn't that crazy? You feel like, I'll do some of those, but not all of them. No. It's psychologically proven you will go through every stage of grief. So the isolation part, that one's hard for me because I actually don't really associate with that one a lot, but I can imagine doing it. Like once you actually kind of acknowledge that this is happening, you kind of pull back from things, right? You just wall off from stuff. You isolate. You don't want to deal. You don't want to accept it. You don't want to look at it, right? You wall off from things, which to this point, you might currently be dealing with isolation, unwanting to do something, confront it, deal with it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely, like mentally, maybe not physically, like
Right.
I'm not closing myself in. And I think that's something, maybe we don't close ourselves into our apartments, our bedrooms, or, obviously because we physically can't, but just not partaking in that conversation, just mentally closing off, not responding to the text as soon or even with as much enthusiasm they normally would, hoping that the conversation dies out.
Yes. It can be isolating from anything, right? Like the activities you like doing or the people you like being around or your engagement at work or whatever it is. You can just isolate mentally, physically. Doesn't matter. You're going to do it. You're going to pull back from things. You're going to isolate from stuff. Third one, again, these are in this order. I feel like it's because they're the most common. But again, you can go through any of these in any order. You can go through denial, anger, and then hop back to denial and then go through anger again. They go in, it does not matter. You'll do all 5 of them for sure. Order can vary. Anger. We all know what anger is, right? Like, I think it's like the first step of actually accepting something is kind of just, in my mind, you're over that isolation. Now you're looking at things, right? And now you're just pissed that it's real. It's like, this is bullshit. Why does this have to be happening? Right? Like, it's unfair. It's garbage. I shouldn't have to do this. I'm pissed at this. Why didn't this happen? Just all that rationalization and anger. In the most recent loss I had, anger was it was the one I didn't want to do the most. I don't know why. It was like internally, I felt like being angry was losing. Being angry was giving in and letting it win, if you will. But again, these are all actually healthy. They sound unhealthy, like you're doing things that are not good for you. But it's the process. You can't become better without doing the process. So for as much as these things suck, dealing with them, just living with them, going through them, not trying to speed through them either, because you can't just make it happen and get over it. You need to process each of them for what they are worth, right? And that's another part that really got me on the most recent loss was like, I just want to be done with this. I don't want to do this, right? Like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to have to go through every stage. I don't want to have to feel all the feelings that I have. I don't want to like confront that demon. I just want it to go away. That is not how life works, right? We don't get to just do the things we want. And in dealing with loss, we have to do it. So for me, the tough one was anger. As I was angry, it felt like I was losing. It felt like I didn't have control anymore, right? Like the denial is already delusional in and of itself. It tells you that it's not happening. So you kind of just say, oh, it's fine, whatever. You're in denial, right? The isolation is just, I don't want to deal with this thing or that thing. I'm going to pull back from them. And it's fine. And this is all my rationalization, right? This is how I just mentally chalked it up as acceptable. But the anger, for me, again, was just, I'm losing because I'm angry. But that's not the case. It's not. You need to be angry. You need to deal with it and feel that anger, right? Like if you just lose the most important thing to you, or what you've deemed very important, or whatever it is, you can be angry. You need to be angry about that, right? Like you can't just be passive and expect it to be better. You'll make the same mistakes. You won't learn and grow from it. So for me, anger, that was a tough one. Next one is bargaining. I kind of get this one in denial kind of screwed up internally in my head. Like denial being, I don't want to deal with it. Bargaining being, I'm going to make any kind of rationalization to make sure, like, get it back. We can still do this. It can still happen. Like, it doesn't need to do this. We can, like, what do I need to do to make this happen, right? Like take, so I've been using a relationship as an example, but let's use death as an example. That's a really common one when people are going through it. They want to bargain anything they can to not deal with it. But as external people related to them, or anybody who's close to someone who's dying, right? We internally are just like, what can I do? What can I give? How can I prevent this current thing that's happening, right? And we run through our heads of like, oh, we can do this, or we can do that, or there's this and this and this and this and this. But that is the bargaining stage. We need to run through all of our options in our mind. We need to deal with that. We need to understand this one and that one and this one. And we need to get through it and go, oh, it's not going to change it. There may be things that'll make some kind of impact and whatever. But if you're going through grief and you're not just bargaining other things in life, then it's likely not going to make an impact or change anything. Again, for me personally, just to give an example, I had to deal with bargaining once I knew my loss was real, right? Like once I acknowledged that this is real, it's tangible. It was stated, it was laid out there for me. There was no more like, maybe. And then my brain just started bargaining and I was like, okay, well, if that's the case, then maybe we can do this. And then, down the road, that'll work. We can do this and it'll work better that way because whatever reasons, right? Doesn't really matter. I was just running through cycle and cycle and cycle of anything I could to rationalize and accept this is happening. You need to deal with this. You need to go through it. So that one makes a lot of sense to me as far as like how you go through stuff and just dealing with loss personally. The last one, the one that everybody wants to get to, but you can't until you go through the other four. Acceptance, right? So this one's pretty self-explanatory, but it's finally looking at the scenario, whether it be happening currently. I don't know that you can grieve preemptively. I don't know well enough to say one way or the other. You go through the loss, you process all the feelings, you deal with them appropriately, or not appropriately, actually. Like you can go ahead and not deal with grief appropriately and have an outcome anyways. I don't know that you ever get to accepting if you don't deal with it appropriately, but I don't know enough on the topic to say that. So say you do get to acceptance, right? That's the point where all the other past feelings are understood, right? The scenario is what it is, or it is what you make of it. I had somebody break that down, saying it is what it is giving up, and what you should phrase it as is, it is what you make of it. I personally love that. I catch myself saying it all the time, and I'm like, oh, I just accept so many negative things, but it is what you make of it, right? Like, at that point, you're accepting, this is my loss. It's real. I'm not going to change it, and I need to deal with it. So, those are all the stages you're going to go through, right? No matter what the loss is, if it's impactful enough in your life, you're going to go through those stages. Devoid of if you have control of it or not. The reason I started with the control versus no control, the no control one, you're going to go through the stages of grief, and if you do it in a healthy manner, you get to acceptance, you continue on, right? That may not be the case for everyone. I'm not going to like broad swipe everything, but majoritively, you continue on in life. The ones that you have some control over it, those are the ones where you have two real directions to go. Again, as you're going through the grieving process, you're going to deal with all the emotions. And as you're dealing with them, you're going to find yourself splitting, right? Unhealthy, healthy, unhealthy, healthy. You're going to do some of both, most likely a lot of unhealthy things. Because, I mean, all the stages don't really feel like a healthy thing, but they are. But for me, when you realize that you're doing this, and you have some level of control, or had some level of control in the reasoning why the loss happened, you need to address it then. You can't sit by idly. You can't let it just exist. You can't try to just process it and move on with life. That is going to take you down the negative path. I'm not saying you're going to like end up as a bum if you do that or whatever, but loss has a lesson to teach all of us. Every single time we go through it, there's something different to learn from that. And if you have any input as to why that loss happened, then it's going to hit you way harder, because you're going to sit and live in regret and shame and guilt and kill yourself over all the things you should have or could have done. And that is not a healthy way to do it. You need to look at those things, right? You need to address them. You need to understand them. Because if you don't understand them, you're going to repeat them. You're going to have the same cycle eating you alive day in and day out nonstop. So as you're going through these cycles and you're dealing with your emotions, you got to take time to understand, well, one, why did this happen, right? And don't just brush it off like, oh, this simple example, that's why. It was this thing right here. Sure, it may have been that thing. May have been a lot of other things too. Look at all of the options. Look at all the reasons. Some of them may be accurate. Some of them may not be accurate. Likely the ones that seem the most reasonable right away, they're probably the least likely or least accurate ones. There's deep-seated things in these losses that need to be uncovered, right? So, as you're processing it, learn, grow, accept the things that you had impact on. Look at them, do not ignore them, accept them, understand how to improve upon them, and make the small changes necessary to move that positive direction. Loss can devastate us, or it can help us grow like nobody's business. That's my 2 cents on the whole thing, at least. I guess is, of what I've said, what is resonating with you in a way that, well, what's resonating with you?
It was all really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that I focused on the most was being very conscious of what impact you had on the scenarios that we have control of.
Mm.
You know, I couldn't agree more, because when something that we're very, very much attached to goes, goes downhill in the worst possible way, and we are just so hurt by it, and everything in our life is just crumbling around us. And
Yeah.
because we put, like you said, we put so much weight into that,
Mm-hmm.
so much importance, and now that's gone. Like that became the center of our being.
Yes.
In many ways.
Right.
And now that's gone. Well, it's like a circus tent. Like that. Yeah, there's maybe 13 poles that create this tent, but there's only one center large pole. Or maybe two center large poles. And now one of those went out, and now like half of your tent is caving in. It's just you're just trying to pick up all these pieces.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to come down and kill all the people and the animals in there.
Right.
But so in that moment, it's very easy to deny any faults of our own.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that's just because we're too proud or because the pain is so much that we're not thinking clearly. Combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very easy to immediately look at the, let's use a relationship, for example.
Yep.
Look at the other person and see all their flaws. And like, well, if they had just done this and if they had just done that. And like you said, what you can see of the problem, like maybe it's something really simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a quick little label can be put on it.
It's the thing that jumps out at you the quickest, right?
Yeah, and it's like, that's the tree, yes. What are the roots?
Right.
How many arms are on that root system? How deep do they go? And it's like, maybe that is the problem. Maybe you're right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the problem. That's the result of the problem.
Yep.
That is the inevitable fruitation of the seed
Mm-hmm.
that was planted.
I think for things that we have some part of control on, it's never a one size fits all. It's never just this thing or just that thing. It's way more dynamic than that. There's so many layers to it, right? We have impact and input on those things. And it's good to understand that. And it's good not to deny it. And I don't mean like in the sense that don't go through denial. You will. You're going to. It's going to happen. But don't live in denial, right? Don't live in the, well, it was just that. If this would have just happened, it would have been fine. Everything would have been fine. I did nothing wrong. Blah, blah, blah. Not that we actively sit here and we're like, I did nothing wrong. Like if we ask ourselves that question, because we almost never do that. But if we actually ask ourselves that question, did I do anything wrong in here? It's like, yeah.
But it's very easy to not be completely honest with what those things were or the magnitude at which those played a role.
Yeah.
And instead be like, yes, I did this and I did this, but.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, I was bad at this, but.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. I would even say, do everything you can to have no but in there, right? I mean, obviously, but as I say, the word but.
Maybe don't make it a comparison.
Yes.
Focus solely on what.
Yes. Like, it's fine to acknowledge in a relationship what was done on the other side.
You should, so you can avoid it. You can learn from it, see how that came to be, and how you can prevent that from occurring again.
Exactly the same as what you should do with yourself. And go, hey, ask yourself, what happened? What did I do? How can I improve it? Right? And don't kill yourself over it. That's the other thing. Like, guilt and shame, okay? At some point in time in the next year or so, I'd love to cover guilt and shame because one of them's useful. The other one is very limitedly useful. Guilt is, I did something wrong, okay? Shame is, I am something wrong. That's not the perfect description, but the difference being acknowledging that something was wrong versus you are bad for having done something, right? Guilt's natural. Shame is natural too, but shame doesn't help us. It does not help us grow in a positive way. It tells us what we are in the wrong way. So look at these things, address them, acknowledge them, see them for what they are, learn from them, see what things you need to develop or what things you need to add or remove from your life to improve whatever it is you've found. But do not linger there as if you are not worthy of growing.
Yeah, I would say absolutely do not linger in that headspace. But it might be a really good idea, which is something that you and I are both doing right now for two different reasons.
Yeah.
But you and I we both have a timeline scheduled so many months in advance where we've cut off certain things or certain activities that we enjoy. Because we want to focus on something else. And it's not because it's because there's healing that needs to be done for both of us. There's growth and healing that needs to be done in those compartments of our life. And so in order to really put our attention there and focus on it, we can't have any of the same old problems interfering with our solving of those problems. So that's a really good, I think that's necessary is if there's something that happens in your life, put a box around it for an extended period of time that you think you can heal in that time. But it can't be like, well, 10 years. I'll go for some 10 years or like, or exactly. But you got to, like you said, you got to get out of that negative headspace.
Yes. You cannot live in that spot where you are the bad guy indefinitely. You need to live with acknowledgement of the things that you need to do. And that's such a hard thing for people to do. We're really good at doing either ignoring things or just berating ourselves, right? That's kind of innate for us. I don't know if it is for everyone, but I feel like it's kind of a human nature type thing. Either we'll ignore stuff and not be like, I'm not going to acknowledge the thing that I did. Not out of active will, just I'm going to ignore it.
It hurts too much right now.
Yes. Or when we look at it, it hurts so bad that all we get from it is what horrible people we are. But there's something deeper in there, right? And that's why I love the analogy of the dragon, right? Because if you ignore the dragon, it doesn't go away. It's still there. If you look at the dragon and you cower in fear, it doesn't go away. It's still there. If you confront the dragon, sorry, I know we only got a few minutes left, but I think the prime example for anybody who's watched Lord of the Rings, this is my personal favorite description. There's a moment where Gandalf Wizard is confronting giant demon, right?
The Balrog.
The Balrog. And to do so, he acknowledges that he needs to confront it, be as strong or stronger than that item. And in the end for him, he's going to die. It's going to happen. A part of him dies, right? But what's the result of that? The best part of him comes back. A better version of him comes back. So in and of ourselves, you need to confront that which is awful, that which you do not want to see. You need to be strong enough to deal with it. And then you need to understand that it will kill a part of you. Some unhealthy part that doesn't need to be there will die. And that's hard. That's really, really hard. But if you let it die, the result is you will become a better person for that.
Yeah, it's like we fear losing a part of ourselves. And in a way, we are. But 100% of our being will always be there. So you're not really losing a part as much as you are replacing it.
Yes.
And yeah, it's not easy. It sucks. It's terrible. It's
painful.
Terrible. It's terrible, but replace it with something better.
Completely.
Take the time you need to heal. Do what you have to, but replace it with something better.
In its own time.
Yep. I know I spent a little time in front of the camera, so we're probably about 15 seconds.
Yep.
You good there?
I am.
All right, brother.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Love you, bud.
Thank you.